So here we are kicking off our new podcast. So you then will hear it on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and live here on YouTube. And today we have these two advertising rock stars who both represent the agencies every brand wants to be partnered with. Is that right, guys?
Absolutely.
So thanks, Wes, and thanks, Angela, for being here. So Angela has more than 20 years of advertising experience. She represents Alma DDB. They have won 86 awards, including 11 Cannes Lions, as well as Effie's, Anna's, One Show, Clio, New York Festival Awards. And Alma has also earned Agency of the Year titles from FIAP, El Sol, El Ojo, and USHABS, right? So, and Alma, if I'm not wrong, is also named the best US DDB office. And on the other hand, we have Wesley Haar. What can we say about Wes? So since 2001, Wesley has created MediaMonks, a global creative production company, where his role as head of operation has been key in the growth of this business. And today, if I'm not wrong, Wes, you can correct me, there are now 2,000 monks around the globe, and you guys won 67 Lions at Cannes.
132, sorry.
You stand corrected, Santi.
But with some great agency partners, of course, throughout the years. So.
Wow. That's amazing. So guys, you're the stars here. So the subject that brings us all together today is how to identify and form leaders within creative agencies. So the first question is going to be tough. And I think, Wes, you can start answering this one. So we all know creatives are to ad agencies what probably actors would be to Hollywood blockbusters movies, right? And they are the superstars and they know it. But at the same time, there's no Godfather without Coppola, right? So leaders are key on exploding everyone's potential. And you guys, you two have been leading from scratch. So how do you both empower, guide, and organize these superstars' work? Wes?
Nice. Well, we don't have superstars. We have amazing people and very talented people and teams full of them. But that's not, I don't believe in the superstar model. I also don't necessarily believe creative is more important than other roles within the organization. And that's maybe a very sort of social democratic view as a Dutch company on how you operate and organize. We've never believed in the sort of ivory tower model of creativity, where a creative team sits in a hallowed space, comes up with ideas and sort of bestows them upon the rest of the organization. We don't believe in that. So for us, it's collaboration. Creatives are some of our most amazing members of the teams. I think to grow creative talent, you need to both give them opportunities and push them into spaces that they might feel a bit uncomfortable with when it comes to their ideas. I think creative it's the sort of high wire act of the work we do, right? Because it's under pressure, it's part of pitching, you have to sell it in a room. So there is a lot of pressure on people from that angle. And I think you have to guide them, teach them, support them, allow them to fail. I think sometimes as experienced Angela probably has a similar note. As experienced people, you sometimes know that some ideas just aren't gonna fly. But if people don't actually learn that by themselves, they also don't have the ability to become better at the work they do. So for me, it's not a superstar model. I think in my mind, that's the agency model of the 50s and 60s that was left to its own devices too long. I don't see that being the way younger millennial-driven companies can operate anymore. So yes, no superstars, which I think is quite similar to the no asshole rule.
Amazing. Great. It's great to hear that, Wes. Thanks. And Angela, what about you?
I was mentioning earlier that the divas are kind of passé. The creative divas are passé. That sounds like Mad Men, to be honest with you. And we do, obviously, creatives are part of a whole, and everyone has a role at kind of selling and pushing ideas through, and we value them equally. We really put emphasis on recruitment, to be honest with you. We have 3 core values that we really adhere to, and they're a collaboration. So we look for strong collaborators, accountability. So making sure that at the end of the day, we're all kind of cognizant of what we're trying to achieve and that we're held accountable for that, and creatives are no different. And then curiosity. So regardless of which functional area you're coming from at the agency, we're really striving for those 3 core beliefs. And creatives are really part of a whole, the whole ecosystem, to try to push ideas through. So we recruit from, as I'm sure you guys do, Wes, right? So we're a multicultural agency within US, which is the mainstream. So we recruit from different cultures and places, etc. So there's different styles, but at the end of the day, we kind of adjust, we notice that people adjust to the reality of the dynamics of the agency. So we don't really find that superstars or egos are really a kind of an issue of today, thankfully. So yeah, collaborators and partners in crime, if I may call them that way.
Yeah, maybe to add to that, I have seen a real shift where when I started, which is about 20 years ago, I think there was still a generation that had sort of been taught maybe the sort of ego angle and maybe some bad behaviors. I'm actually really, really impressed by the sort of the creatives that have hit the industry over the last 5 to 10 years. I think collaborative mindset that you see is really quite prevalent.
Yeah. Go ahead, Wes.
I was just going to say, what you see, I think also creative more interested and more hungry to actually work with, because we have a creative production background, to work with production people, to work with executional talent, and to sort of get more input from a broader set of creatives, and not just this traditional view on what creativity is. So I've been super impressed with the change in the industry over the last decade or so.
Yeah, and I think that because the lines are so blurred now, the level of co-creativity is much more broader. So you have, when I say collaborators, is because you end up working with perhaps your partner at the media agency, or your partner at the digital agency, or your partner at the a content partner, et cetera. So there's a lot of co-creation happening. So I think that also helps to kind of democratize the ideation process a bit in this time of media agnostic ideas. So I think that has also kind of contributed to that shift.
Awesome. And regarding the same question, is there anything that you guys are on these days that, as you said, like, things changed? Like, are there any specific things that you are doing to empower these people?
It's so from my perspective, what I think is, because we're digital native as a company, I think it's sort of really trying to get people to understand what digital creativity is. I think honestly, when I look at a sort of a less positive note, the last 5-6 years, I don't think it's been a great time for digital creativity. I think it's become more contained, it's become more formulaic, it's become more formatted, and a lot of that is down to how clients spend their money, which is mostly on pretty standard digital advertising formats. So it's actually making sure people look at digital and understand the full breadth of what we can do with interactive spaces and sort of innovation and technology, instead of just trying to cram traditional advertising thinking into a modern box. I actually had a talk about this yesterday at Advertising Week here in Mexico, which is the bulk of online advertising now is actually traditional formats, right? It's linear film. Might be shorter linear film, might be somebody shot it vertically, but it's traditional in very many ways. And I think I'm seeing a wave of creatives hit the industry that haven't really seen what digital and interactive advertising used to be. So I think a lot of it is also a bit of training, a bit of historic knowledge, which we do very badly as a digital industry. We don't really teach or train people on the stuff that has come before us, and just get people to open their minds on the full experience instead of just social ad formats. So that's a lot of what we're focusing on at the moment.
I think that so there's a couple of shifts that we've noticed in the industry, and that is that the traditional AOR, agency of record agreement, is kind of giving ways to more project-based assignments, and there's good and bad with that, right? The good is that it keeps you challenged and motivated to kind of learn more. So you can find yourself working, I don't know, very different categories, different, business challenges from one day to another. So I think that keeps overall the talent engaged because they feel like they're learning something new. I think that with that has come, so a lot of clients, want continuity of resources, right? They feel that, especially, and we have several clients that, continuity is really key, like for instance, pharma, because there's a lot of learning, right? Investment in learning that goes, with it. So the continuity can kind of lend itself for, talent, erosion, et cetera. So what we try to do is to keep especially creatives motivated is to rotate internally. And we try to do that every, at least on the creative side, right? Every, assignments at least, because we want that learning to be kind of spread across all of the agency. So that's, one of the, motions that we try to, adhere to make sure that there's that, diversified knowledge. We also promote blue sky ideas. So with all of our clients, we do what we call open briefs, right? So, the core team from a planning and an account management perspective will share out kind of the biggest challenge of each of our clients, and we'll share it in an open environment to the whole creative team so that everyone can kind of partake and understand what are we facing with all of our different clients. We call that bullseye process. And it just allows everyone to work kind of free from the confinements of a brief, because again, it's kind of blue sky. And a lot of those initiatives that have been kind of proactive on the agency side have actually moved on and have really kind of made inroads. So that is also an initiative that keeps kind of the entire team engaged. And then I know that, there's kind of an internal initiative that we call Mindshare, which is we have, I think there's kind of like a cadence to it, but we have sessions whereby each functional area will share out kind of like a new opportunity of learning, either coming from the content experience team or if it comes from the planning team, et cetera, and all of the agency partakes on that. And it's meant to kind of give, fresh perspectives, all takes on, trends, digital trends, or, et cetera, et cetera. It's just meant to kind of provide fresh perspectives. So that's another way in which first we fuel kind of ideas, And two, we kind of cross-pollinate everything that is going on in each individual kind of areas. So those are kind of pointed things that we do, that we try to commit to make sure that the level of engagement is kind of high, especially on the creative side.
That sounds great, and it's probably very useful for people like the audience hearing like how to do to make this better, right? So these initiatives and ideas that you guys are bringing to the table, for sure, will help a lot of people that are like struggling with this with this problem.
Right.
And
so,
at the same time,
for instance, Sandy, let me just give you an example. So we'll have kind of a key partner of ours, like it can be, a media partner, or, come in and speak to the latest kind of opportunities from a production capability standpoint, right? And that will kind of fuel the creative, and kind of think about opportunities that they can kind of interpret into their own assignments. So either a Facebook or a Google or whatever media partner, we would have them come and kind of do a mind share here at the agency. So, yeah.
That sounds like empowering.
Yeah.
Cool. And talking about leadership, I don't know if everyone here in the audience knows that here at MediaMonks, like we have new leaders, right? So probably everyone here knows that C. Martin Sorrell, who left WPP, he started S4 Capital, and he started with MediaMonks. So he chose these guys, and then they chose different agencies. Now they have recently acquired Circus. And talking about leadership, so you guys are having new leaders every quarter. And how do you, Wes? So this question is mostly for you, as probably people that are hearing this are or either with their agencies or either being acquired or acquiring companies. And probably there's a question there for the people that work there, like how's everything gonna be in the future? Who's gonna be my new leader? What's gonna be my role? So talking about growth, Wes, you started a company almost 20 years ago, and today you have 2,000 people. So tell us a little bit more about that growth. How do you scale it? How do you manage leadership on acquisitions?
It's a very interesting process. I think so. When you look at the process that we're in, and we're adding a lot of teams to the family, about 850 people over the last 6-7 months. The most important thing to me is the teams that are joining, there's a very similar mindset, very similar sort of cultural DNA. It tends to be great entrepreneurs who have built companies with a very specific cultural imprint that do not want to sell into traditional networks, do not believe traditional networks have the ability to sort of capture and keep growing that type of talent and culture. And I think we're building something with S4 that is set up for those types of companies, right? Really great companies that should be getting a bigger spotlight and a bigger stage for their capabilities in their teams. So a huge part of the upside for people is this bigger table that we now get to join, partly because of Sir Martin's Rolodex, partly because of the combined consolidated teams that we now have. I think leadership sort of has different layers to it. There's leadership in a entrepreneurial sense. I'm personally extremely excited to see all of the additional entrepreneurs that have joined and all of the sort of brain and business power that brings to the table. Companies of our type tend to be quite sort of entrepreneurially run. So just having more of those people in the mix is amazing. And then all of these teams have cultivated their own amazing talent and leadership. And for me, it's making sure that everybody, I think the risk with these types of things is that people lose a career path, right? They can't see what happens next. The most important thing we're doing is making sure it opens up more career opportunities, because suddenly you're going from a team of 100 to 200 people working on regional clients, you're suddenly working in a team of 2,000 people on global clients. And the people that we all have, I think, are super motivated to be part of that growth. You mentioned acquisitions, we call it mergers for that very specific point, which is, this isn't the MediaMonks show, it isn't the S4 show. We're building, I think, something new from scratch. And we're doing it bottom up, just with the sort of energy and power of the amazing teams that we have. For me personally, I have a boss now. I never used to have one. SMS, Sir Martin Sorrell, we call him SMS. It's actually, I started MediaMonks after dropping out of college. So I call this my MBA, which stands for Martin's Business Advice, which is very helpful. And being able to work with what I think is the best businessman our industry has ever seen is just, it's a bit of a fire hose, but very inspiring and sort of grateful for that.
And challenging.
Well, he sends a lot of emails. But the main thing I think that I'm excited by, all of the companies we're bringing together have very non-hierarchical structures. They're very flat. They're driven by millennials mostly, big sort of influx of Gen Z talent. So you sort of have all of the makings and settings of a company that can really be dominant for the next decade. And that's what we're trying to build, which is just exciting to be able to do. And for me personally, to interact with all of these amazing new people has been one of the most fun things over the last year or so.
Amazing. And it's also interesting. So probably people are thinking at this moment, like, you're talking about millennials, and Martin Sorrell has been through the whole WBP for, I don't know, like 40 years.
Yeah, so he's an older millennial.
He's an older millennial. That's great. So, and Angela. And so Wes has just said that he mentioned careers, right? Like professional development within the same agency. And we are probably familiarized with people needing to leave the agency in order to grow. So looking for another agency in order to have a bigger stake or a better position. So, and probably you would agree on this one. We think that I mean, like, creative agencies are today struggling, right? On business-wise. And so there's probably less budget for the same scope of work. Mm-hmm. So rotation within the industry is just increasing. It's higher and higher. So how do you, Angela, and then Wes, how do you guys manage these, like, retaining talent?
So right. So let me tackle kind of the first part of the question. So I think that talent retention is talent churn is a reality, right? So I think we've had to kind of redefine what loyalty means, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm what you call a lifer. I've been with DDB for, more than, as you said in your intro, right, 25 plus years. So it's really rare to find that nowadays. So we've kind of reframed the notion that, people are probably going to, leave pretty quickly because, millennials, and the ones that are coming after them are very impatient, right? So what we try to do is honestly first understand that loyalty is redefined, right? And that, they're in constant search of what else. And to make sure that we have honestly a strong pipeline, that we redefine what we do as much as we can, meaning diversify our service offerings. So for instance, because we do segment market, we do a lot of marketing consultancy. So we've actually recruited, so yes, creative will continue to be hugely important in the work that we do, but it is also kind of understanding the client business. So the account management team has really kind of turned to more of kind of the business side to work together with clients especially as clients more and more trying to replicate kind of the agency structures in-house. We need to understand their business, right? So you know, it's developing learning agendas that are really robust. So we try to, you know, to give you an example, where we participate of the Phyllis Project, which is, you know, identifying and developing women creative within the DDB network, right? So we participate participate of that initiative every year. We send folks to huge events like, you know, Southwest by Southwest. We send it, well, let's see if that happens this year, right? To Cannes, CME. So we're, you know, again, it's trying to keep up with the trends that are out there and giving folks the opportunity to really participate and feel like they're really not missing out. And again, understanding that rotation will happen and that you can't really feel frustrated about it, but really get ready, be proactive, have a strong internal pipeline, but being super performance driven, and then have external candidates kind of lined up to be able to kind of replenish the pipeline, because it will happen, right? So it's not the same.
Yeah.
So embracing is important.
Exactly.
Yeah, and maybe to add to that, I think there's a natural path for people in our industry, a path that people find exciting, and it's a path that we try and be able to support, which is international work, working in other countries and other cultures, being able to work on a diverse set of clients and types of projects. A lot of this is about and I think our industry just attracts that type of person. It's a lot about curiosity and quality and creativity, which means people want to be able to taste from lots of different areas of the industry. I think we try and build this sort of mythical career where somebody can just be there and do their 20-year stint, right? But the reality is it's great if people have opportunities to move on that help them do what they need to do. I love having alumni of our companies across the industry and sort of seeing how happy people were that we were part of their career and a step hopefully towards great things. It also just opens up a company to keep inbound talent and make it possible for people to keep growing. So I think it can actually be quite dangerous to have little to no sort of change in personnel, because that just means you become stagnant as a company.
Exactly.
Yeah, so there's also a bit of a balancing act. Like we have people that have been at the company 15 years, and it's one of the things that makes me most proud. We have people that have done 2 years at MediaMonks and work in amazing roles globally, and I like nothing more than catching up and grabbing a beer. And there's nothing more exciting than seeing new talent hit the organization and make impressions. It all makes sense. And I don't think there is a right or wrong way to do it, besides just being super supportive of what people want to do personally. That's the only thing you can sort of be smart about, I think.
Right. Yeah, no, and the thing is, I mean, when you're part of and to your point about providing international opportunities, obviously one of the good things of working for a network is precisely that. We've had several exchanges, which have been very, very motivating to folks here. So that we highly promote that as much as we can, and people really gravitate towards that. So.
Awesome. It seems also that human resources or talent or culture managers are more and more, like, every day they are increasing the importance of having good talent managers and culture managers within the organization, right? Yeah. And Wes, are you guys working on you manage like a single office, right? So you have a bunch of different offices all around the world, but you work as you have so you have people from an office working with projects of a different office, and right? Is that right? Is that correct?
It's one office in many places. So the most important thing for us is everybody's a colleague. We don't focus on internal billing. I think the most important thing for us is to make it super easy for our people to work together, because the work we do isn't necessarily easy in and of itself. So let's be as easy and fun a place to work as is possible. So we make sure that there's no friction beyond just the day-to-day difficulties of doing great work. What I think is really fun is this idea of 2, 3, 4 offices collaborating on something. Also just opens up a lot of travel, opens up a lot of personal relationships, opens up a lot of sort of cultural exchanges. That's not always the easiest thing, right? As an example, there's this amazing book called Culture Map, which sort of goes into the differences in verbal and non-verbal communication across cultures. And I'm Dutch. We founded the company in Amsterdam. I think the Dutch are the worst, except for the Germans. Very direct and with very little artifice. But it's fun to see how the organization has grown and is growing now that we have so many Asian colleagues and Latin American colleagues. It's been pretty fun to see, even with the stumbles and the frictions you can get from that, to sort of see how that becomes a big melting pot.
Amazing. And Angela, so at Alma DDB, based in Miami, you guys have been winning a ton of awards year over years on the best U.S. Hispanic agency, right? So how, if you will say that, so you were winning all these awards year over year. This is becoming, in the last 5 years, probably more competitive. There are more agencies in the same space. As a whole, we were saying that the industry is struggling, right? So when it comes to leadership, is a good leader the one who brings out the best in their team, or who works hard for the benefits of the agency, or both? Like, how do you normally have these both side people, like the ones that lead and brings out the best of their team, and at the same time are accountable for the profits, for the time, for the deliverables?
Right.
How do you manage that?
So I think, to be honest with you, I think it's both, right? So I don't think you can have one without the other, right? So one enables the other. I think that, sorry about that. I think that you've got to have a successful business if you want to survive, right? So, people, product, and profit, right? Those are kind of like the 3 P's, and you need to kind of achieve the balance of all those 3 at any given point. In the case of our agency, we've got kind of like the yin and yang, right? So we've got 2 co-presidents, one on the creative side, the other one on the business side, and there is tension, right? But we strike the right balance. So it's as simple as that, to be honest with you. The more profitable, the more healthy the company, honestly, the more we can play. That's why I think that it's got to be one and the other, right? So if you're not healthy, if you're not profitable, then obviously it's going to limit the ability of the flexibility and the ability to be choosy in what you do, to prioritize the work, to really. So it's the combination of both. Yes, either through one person that can embody both and do both, or through the combination of the 2 areas. Yeah.
And Wes, so you said we look for millennial people, for millennial-based agencies, for entrepreneurs, and is profitability one of the important things that you look after?
So few things there. So millennial agencies, I think less about age, but more about mindset, right? A lot of that is about just companies that have a modern way of thinking. Some of our teams are more senior because they have a lot of experience in the business and really sort of focus on the business impact and challenges at the C level. But it happens with a very modern mindset, and it happens with a lot of focus on partnerships and collaboration and sort of less traditional models of agency roles, like the AOR role, like Angela just said, isn't that popular anymore. When we talk about the millennial mindset, that also, I think, looks at smart, savvy ways of operating. Tends to be a little less layered, a little less hierarchy. Probably a few roles that aren't typical in our organizations. There's probably a little less account management. There's a little less sort of hand-holding, which isn't always easy for clients to deal with, right? We're trying to work in different ways, and we're trying to be more efficient with speed and cost, which means you might prioritize certain roles over others. But that mindset does mean these companies tend to run really, really decent margins. Is it a prerequisite? No. We look at quality, we look at talent, we look at geography. Sometimes some of the most amazing teams maybe don't quite have the business acumen, and they just need access and support. But most of the teams that have joined are fast growing and high margin, just because that's a testament to the quality of their team and sort of operating a bit differently and getting a lot of excitement from clients. So the short answer is it's not the only thing we look at, but it does tend to happen because the things we look at, modern team, modern way of working, tend to bring that at the moment.
Cool, makes total sense.
And you know what? I'm sorry. Can I? So I wanted to answer the other half of the question that you had posed to me, which was, how do you generate revenue in a kind of dwindling industry, I think is what you kind of mentioned. I'm paraphrasing, right? So how do you, continue to be profitable, knowing that the agency, some agencies are struggling, right? The industry as a whole. So in our case, I got to tell you that it's not really kind of like a secret formula. We're very selective in terms of what we go after. So new business can really drain your resources and erode talent. So we try to have consensus in terms of what we're aiming for, what we're going after. We try to put a value to our work. I think that we've kind of brought it upon ourselves to kind of devalue through procurement the work that we do. So we try to put as much value to our work as we possibly can. Honestly, is make it hard for the clients to not work with you, right? So be performance driven as much as we can. So, I mean, we're the first ones that are kind of promoting performance evaluations, postmortem evaluations, and because, we know that building relationships is harder and harder with clients. So at least try to understand where you stand with them. So it's a bit harder to them, for them to come back every, 6 months, every change of a CMO to kind of change, agencies and reevaluate the relationship. So that's really it.
Great. And on leadership and on scaling, which are if you'll say this is the one KPI, you will probably have like 5 or 10. But if you say like this is the one KPI or the 3 KPIs that I measure, and how do I compensate my people on these KPIs?
It's an interesting one. I think leadership comes in so many different forms. I struggle sometimes to go, this is what leadership looks like. I actually think there's a risk there because a lot of the reason for the inequality of sort of male versus female leadership is because for a long time leadership was seen as sort of typical male qualities. So I think it's important not to make it too templatized. I think leadership tends to be mixture of being able to lead people. People have to respect you. People ideally like you, but respect is the more important part, and they respect you because of your honesty, your transparency, the quality of your own work, your ability to solve problems, your effectiveness to support them when they're having difficulties either professionally or personally. Good leadership ladders up to company goals. I think it's important to not have a structure where company goals are against sort of people's well-being, right? Because then leaders have to sort of manage the friction there. I think it's important for leaders to be able to sort of lead in a way that their team and their own roles ladders up and supports business goals in a smart way. Sometimes we look at some metrics around finances. Sometimes we look at some metrics around team happiness. Sometimes we look at metrics about client happiness or quality of work. Like there's a bunch of different ways to try and sort of get to some meaningful numbers, but a lot of it is so personality bound and personality based that we often go a little softer on sort of leadership metrics.
Cool. Angela, do you guys have Alma DDB? Do you use specific KPIs in order to measure not just leadership? I mean, like, you're in the path of scaling, right? So what are the KPIs you measure, and how do you compensate people?
So we have it's really a DDB wide survey. It's called The Voice. It goes out once a year, and it has different KPIs, different ratings. And we tend to kind of guide ourselves by that, right? Because it's the opportunity for employees to really kind of speak freely about, the motivations, the barriers defined in their works, their hopes and dreams, etc. So we do that once a year. We have, and we really, we develop a plan to kind of address all of the feedback that we hear. We do department breakouts. We discuss them in detail. We actually look at indices versus other DDB networks, versus other years, because we really take it seriously, right? So, and from there, we've, things have come back that we've kind of, that we've implemented, and that we've seen the movement, right, on certain areas, on employee engagement, etc. So we really guide ourselves by that. I think that we also try to be very competitive from a salary perspective, to be honest with you. We've noticed that it will always come down to balance life work and salary compensation, emotional compensation, and financial compensation. So we really are proactive at looking at that and making sure that we're at par with industry, if not, above industry. And then we proactively look at our benefits as well to make sure, there's a lot of competition in other industries, like the one that probably Wes represents. So we try to stay competitive as much as we can, because we know that that's what, the young talent is looking for, right? Not so much, it's the emotional compensation, but it's also how can I get a balance, work life, etc. To the question about leadership, to be honest with you, I couldn't agree more with what was said. I think that we want to be surrounded by good people. So I think that our leadership style in general is empathetic, or that's what we try. So yes, it's about, seeing through the maze, providing direction, empowering your team, freedom to fail, freedom from chaos, giving them the structure that they need. But it's also to kind of relate to them on a one-on-one basis. And we really try to promote that sense of kind of family. Yeah. And we've actually had many folks that have left the agency that have actually come back, because that's something that they miss. And having folks that actually stay kind of on average 2 years and still get that sense of feeling kind of, nurtured in an environment that is very competitive is is kind of a style of leadership that we really promote.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And on this path, like communication, you were saying, Angela, like relationships, like relating with each other. So communication is also very important, right? So you have KPIs, good communication, in order also to make people accountable. So any specific recommendation that you will say this helped us in Alma DDB or in MediaMonks in terms of communication, things that helped us while we were scaling?
So I'll tell you, I mean, this is a very pragmatic recommendation. So over communicate. We have, and follow a cadence, right? So we have monthly management meetings. Those management meetings basically translate to each head of department cascading that information down. We have quarterly town halls with the agency folks as a whole. We have different offices as well as MediaMonks. And basically we make sure that everyone partakes of that discussion. It's basically meant to be an open forum for everyone to just, Q&A to give a sense of where the company is heading. Because we are obviously part of a big network, but we feel like we keep the mentality of kind of a nimble small shop. So it's making everyone aware of what's happening with the agency, why we're doing the things that we're doing, and having folks understand what's their role in the bigger picture. So that's really it. It's just communicating, over communicating, and doors open.
Cool.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think we're not good enough at it. It's a really interesting challenge between how do you scale communications without sort of becoming too corporate and without losing context.
Yeah.
So we're in many ways a sort of a small to medium-sized business that's still founder run. With a lot of campfire communication, right? A lot of sort of direct transparency in talks. But also a company that operates in 29 countries with a huge amount of news and activity constantly. And it's sort of finding the balance between what do you share, where, and how. I think people use very different ways to get information, right? So it's also interesting to see how we try and consolidate that in a channel that's useful for everyone. So the short answer there is it's probably the biggest struggle is how do you do that in a way that still feels authentic to what MediaMonks is and doesn't become like a corporate machine, but then isn't too small and scrappy to not get people what they need. And we're not there yet. So I'm hoping we get a lot better at it this year.
Okay, cool. So guys,
growing pains.
Yeah.
So we have 10 minutes left and people at YouTube are clapping, saying, yeah, rock, and happy faces and claps. And here's one person that says, yeah, I agree with the non-superstars model. Instead of dealing with egos, you deal with human beings interested in other human beings, of course. And so we have just 10 minutes and we don't need to use them. So if you feel like saying something, each of you, that you haven't said, so is there any specific thing that you would like to tell to the person who's listening, a person who's starting a creative agency, a person who's leading one of the big 6 or now big 7 with S4? So is anything that you guys would like to say?
I would say ad agencies still rock. We're still sexy. we're reinventing ourselves. So, don't rule us out yet.
That's the depth of the landscape has maybe been over exaggerated. For people thinking about starting something, it's the best and the worst decision you'll ever make. And you'll find out what I mean by that when you do it. Leadership, I think you have to be in a situation where you balance honesty with feelings, right? I think sometimes there's a lot of modern thinking around this, radical transparency and sort of extreme directness, and it's sort of driven by Silicon Valley mindsets. I still think we're all humans, so you have to be transparent, honest, supportive, but also keep in mind that people have feelings. And I'm sometimes surprised by how that seems to be fading out of management more and more. As it gets more technocratic, and the worst and best thing about trying to build an agency is it's not a good business model, right? Because it goes linearly. The more money comes in, the more money you need to spend. But the exciting thing is the more you grow, the more diverse the talent base becomes, and the more your opportunities grow, and the more you can actually start doing and delivering and thinking about. So there is sort of a beautiful mix that happens as you grow and scale and see what the alchemy sort of brings together. And I would say if you have people, trust them, give them opportunities that might feel like they're a bit early, or you're not quite sure, people will surprise you more often than not.
Amazing. And I'm taking one question from the audience that says, we would like to know the most challenging case they are struggling with. In terms, I think it's in terms of people, like on leading teams, right? So short answer on this one.
Communication is
the biggest challenge.
Yeah, communication is a real challenge for us because we haven't gotten our heads around how do you scale it, and that sometimes makes it difficult for people to understand their personal path within the organization, and we need to be better at that. So for me, it's visibility of people's personal role and how it ladders up to the complete story.
Cool. Thanks for the transparency, Wes.
I
Always.
think on our end, I think there's a question of I don't know how to say this enough. So the expectations of growth, they just there's a lot of impatience, we find that folks get unmotivated, right? But so it's how do you keep them motivated, knowing that things take time sometimes. So that we face that. I mean, I find myself having these conversations almost weekly, to be honest with you, with young talent that just it's instant gratification, right? So I want it now, and what is it that I need to do, and it's milestone based, right? So if I do A, B, it will come, and C, D, it will come. So sometimes it gets challenging because it doesn't happen sometimes as sequenced and as fast as we may want it to. So that's something that we face every day, to be honest with you.
Cool. Okay, so Angela and Wes, thanks for the time. I'm totally sure that this has been very helpful for a lot of people, and congratulations to you both.
Thank you.
And see you probably in Cannes, and hopefully Cannes this year would be for you both as good as last year.
It doesn't get canceled.
Fingers crossed. Fingers
it doesn't get canceled. We have to wait.
Yeah.
Who
knows? Who knows?
Well, thank you. Very, very interesting conversation. Really fun.
Thank you for having us.
Amazing.
Thank you, Santi.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Wes. Thank you, Angela. Bye-bye.